Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Lauren.
And I am Ken.
And you may recognize our voices from the podcast Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Missing and Unsolved. But today we're here to tell you about a nonprofit organization we have created called the Florida Themis Project.
Themis is the Greek goddess of justice, if you're wondering about the name.
The Florida Themis Project aims to support loved ones and victims of unsolved crime by financially contributing to various types of investigative tools, including DNA testing.
We also help the families and loved ones of missing people by assisting with awareness campaigns, helping in ground searches, and any other assistance that we can provide to the families.
We're asking you for your help to spread the word and grow our organization so we can help as many people as possible.
So please be sure to check out our website at floridathemisproject.org for info about how you can help or donate.
We're also on Facebook and Instagram at Florida Themis Project.
Even simply sharing our post on social media is very helpful.
So thank you in advance, true crime friends, for your help and support. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Lauren.
I am Ken.
And this is Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Missing and Unsolved.
This is a Tomahawk Media production covering true crime,
missing people,
unsolved crimes,
and cold cases.
Please check out our website, paradiseafterdark.com.
On the website, you'll find links to all of our episodes, even the archived ones, our mailing list, merch store, and links to our social media.
We also have a cute little virtual tip jar there, so if you leave us a tip, we'll give you a shout out on the show. So, Lauren, what are we discussing tonight?
We are covering the Fort Myers 8. The Fort Myers 8 skeletons found in rural Fort Myers almost 2 decades ago. Police and forensics are still baffled by this case and are still searching for the identities of some of the remains. This episode is being created in conjunction with the Florida Themis Project, our nonprofit organization that highlights a new missing person or cold case each month. Please share this episodes and the posts on our social media and the Florida Themis Project social media.
On the morning of March 23, 2007, around 10 a.m., Lee County Sheriff Sergeant Jennifer Soto received a phone call that would lead her and other officers into the dark Florida woods and uncover a grisly scene.
A 911 call came in from an ecologist who was surveying the land for a developer. He told Lee County Sheriff's Office that he had found a human skull about 50 yards from the dirt road in a thick stand of Melaleuca trees off Arcadia Road. At first, Soto and her partner were skeptical because the area had long been used as a dumping ground by hunters disposing of hogs and alligator remains. But once they responded to the scene, they confirmed that it was true. There was a human skull at the scene, but not just one.
In a report by NBC News, Soto stated, immediately the officers had discovered that where the one skull was, there was a second, and within minutes, I would say, the third had been discovered, Soto recalled. By 7 o'clock that night, when we had branched out, we had a total of 8 skeletons.
The 8 skulls and more than 1,000 other bones collected by investigators were scattered around a 200-square-yard area, most of them hidden by roots, plants, leaves, and other ground cover. None of the bodies had been buried.
The Fort Myers Police Department declared the area a crime scene, of course, and called the Florida Department of Law Enforcement for assistance.
For the next few weeks, officers from several other departments helped with the meticulous search of the area. They used screens to sift through the dirt, set up grids, and brought in cadaver dogs to help find the remains. Forensic anthropologist Heather Walsh-Haney from the Florida Gulf Coast University was brought in to map out the scene and to predict where bones may have been carried away by groundwater and animals.
And she's no rookie at this, because in the previous years, Walsh-Haney had helped identify the victims of the 9/11 World Trade Center attacks, the Value Jet airplane crash, and Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah, we covered the Value Jet crash in our episode titled Swamp Bodies, if anyone wants more info on that. That was a long time ago, several years ago.
Seems like forever ago for sure, but to find what's out there and to know what's out there is unbelievable. Well, Walsh Haney stated that she believed that they had found approximately 90% of each skeleton, which is pretty impressive considering the amount of time.
Crime scene technicians had hoped the dirt underneath the remains might have revealed spent bullets or ligature remains if the bodies had been homicide victims, but that didn't happen. Police described their efforts as the largest excavation of human skeletal remains in Florida history.
Florida history, that's crazy. Well, after combing through the scene and working inside the Lee County Medical Examiner's office, experts were able to determine that all of the victims were white males, but perhaps some of them might have been Hispanic.
Their ages ranged from 18 to 49. It was estimated they were placed in the woods between 1980 and the year 2000. The first reports identified the men as such. Body number 1, age late 20s to early 40s, height 5 feet 2 inches to 5 feet 7 inches tall. In life, he had sustained injuries to his legs, forearm, and chest. He had 3 wisdom teeth and had not had current dental care. He could have lived a transient lifestyle.
Body number 2 was that of a man aged 20 to 30s, height 5 foot 6 inches to 6 feet tall. This person had healed fractures to his right fibula, nose, and collarbone. He does not have any wisdom teeth, and they say he may have had braces.
Body number 3, age 20 to 30s, height 5 feet 7 inches to 6 feet 3 inches. Very good dental care with all 4 wisdom teeth.
Body number 4, aged 20 to 30s, height 5 foot 5 to 5 foot 11, with some dental fillings and all 4 wisdom teeth intact.
Body number 5, age 18 to early 20s, height 5 foot 10 to 6 foot 4. Excellent dental care. One of this individual's wisdom teeth were removed. The 3 other remain.
Body number 6, age late 20s to early 40s, height 5 foot 5 to 5 foot 11 inches tall. Now, this individual could have complained of hip or back problems. All 4 wisdom teeth are present, and there are dental fillings in other teeth.
Body number 7, white male, possibly Hispanic, age 20 to 30s, height 5 foot 11 to 6 foot 3. And this individual had all 4 wisdom teeth. He fractured his right wrist at some point during his life.
And the final body, number 8, age 20 to 30, height 5 foot 6 inches tall to possibly 6 feet tall, with good dental work and all 4 wisdom teeth intact. He might have been an athlete, a weightlifter, or had some sort of job that required heavy lifting. And let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
And we are back. So one of the first theories about how these skeletal remains ended up there was a funeral home dump, because not that long ago, the Tri-State Crematory, located in Northwest Georgia, came to national attention in 2002 when over 300 bodies that had been consigned to their crematorium for proper disposal were never cremated, but instead were dumped on the crematorium's site. On February 15, 2002, investigators found piles of rotting human bodies in a storage shed, in vaults, and scattered throughout the property. The crematorium manager, Brent Marsh, reportedly told authorities that the crematorium's incinerator was broken. However, many of the remains dated back at least 3 years, and on some estimates, several could have been there for more than 10 years. The search ultimately recovered 339 uncremated bodies. Of the 339 bodies that were discovered, 226 were identified. But in this case, investigators say no clothing was found, nor was there any evidence of the medical paraphernalia that would typically come from a funeral home.
Well, there were some other theories. These included a mass suicide or possibly victims of human trafficking. We have heard of everything from people believing that it was a plane that went down that was missing in the Bermuda Triangle, to a mob hit in Tampa, to children who went missing on spring break trip, Detective Soto told NBC News. Now, most prevalent and quite upsetting to most local residents is the idea that a serial killer may have used the area to lure and hide his victims.
There was a possibility that the skeletons were victims of suspected serial killer Daniel Conahan. Daniel Owen Conahan Jr. was convicted of one murder, but has been linked to over a dozen, mostly of homosexual men in Charlotte County, Florida, in what came to be known as the Hog Trail murders. The murder of one of Conahan's victims, Richard Montgomery, was so grisly the trial was described as not for the squeamish. Conahan was accused of luring his victims into the woods. He allegedly told Montgomery that he would pay him for nude bondage photos, and Montgomery agreed. Conahan was convicted of raping Montgomery, strangling him, and then removing the young man's genitals to prevent DNA trace.
Well, on February 1st, 1994, the mutilated corpse of a man was discovered in Punta Gorda. The body had been outside for about a month and had a rope burns on the skin, and the genitalia had been removed and discarded. Now, this man was never identified.
On January 1st, 1996, a Northport family's dog brought home a male human skull. Police eventually pieced together much of the skeleton and determined that the genitalia had been cut out, similar to the 1994 victim. The Northport skeleton has also never been identified.
A third man's mutilated body was discovered in Northport on March 7, 1996. He had been killed only 10 days earlier. He also remained unidentified until June of 1999, when he was identified as John William Malarago.
Another man's skull was found in Charlotte County on April 17, 1996. Police searched the surrounding woods and found the rest of the man as well as a second body. The second body was a man who had been raped, murdered, and mutilated only the day before and was identified as Richard Allen Montgomery, the murder Conahan was eventually convicted of.
The first body was later identified as Kenneth Lee Smith.
In May of 1996, a few witnesses directed police to Daniel Conahan, including one who had escaped him when Conahan's car became stuck while driving him down a dirt road. Later, police linked Conahan to a 1994 Fort Myers police report where Stanley Burden had been propositioned, tied to a tree, and nearly strangled. Burden survived and even had rope scars on his body 2 years later. Conahan's credit cards were subpoenaed and his house was searched, turning up evidence linking him to Burden and Richard Montgomery. On July 3, 1996, Conahan was arrested and brought to Lee County for the attempted murder of Burden. The following February, he was charged with the murder of Montgomery, while the Burden attempted murder charges were dropped.
While Conahan awaited trial, another skeleton was found in Charlotte County on May 22, 1997. And 10 months later, the DNA identified the remains as William Charles Patton. Now, he had disappeared in 1993.
Stanley Burden, the star witness at Conahan's trial, had been attacked within a mile of the site where the 8 skeletons in Fort Myers were found. Daniel Conahan is considered a very likely suspect, with the victims' sex and ages matching up with the Hog Trail victims. They were also found quite close to Conahan's known disposal site. However, there is currently no conclusive evidence linking him to the murders of the Fort Myers 8. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be back.
Welcome back, everybody.
Police assured the public that there was no need for alarm because evidence suggested that whatever happened occurred years ago. Detective Jennifer Soto said if the skeletons were the work of a killer, the suspect was probably long gone. 6 months after the discovery, the authorities still knew little about the skeletons other than they were white men ages 18 to 49 and had died as far back as 1980. The authorities hand-delivered the 8 skulls to a sculptor, Sharon Long, a forensic sculptor who tried to reconstruct their faces. Sharon Long has degrees in art and anthropology. She worked for the National Geographic Society and the Smithsonian, helping reconstruct the faces of mummies and recreating faces of some of the first settlers' remains discovered in Jamestown.
This is, in fact, an art. Because if you were at CrimeCon, you remember Nick Meck put together the head, the bust where they took a skull and then basically recreated the face. It's a pretty amazing art to see.
Yeah.
And it definitely takes some talent. Well, meanwhile, a forensics laboratory in Texas was working to extract DNA from the bones. Up to 50 other families from across the country submitted DNA for testing. By January of 2008, detectives had identified 2 of the victims through DNA. Eric D. Kohler, 21 years old, of Port Charlotte, and John C. Blevins, 38, of Fort Myers, were identified by comparing DNA from the bones to DNA from their relatives. In September of 2008, Jonathan Tehei, 24, was also identified. This is some pretty amazing stuff. Kohler, Blevins, and Tehei all disappeared from the Fort Myers area in 1995, and they were all said to live transient lifestyles, very, very similar to Conahan's victims.
Also, in January of 2008, John Walsh and the crew of America's Most Wanted were in Fort Myers to shoot a segment on the discovery of the Fort Myers 8. Detectives hoped that the show's viewers would provide key clues to identifying the remaining victims. That's where John Walsh comes into the picture. See, he's from Florida, and it's where his son was kidnapped and murdered, and where he began his career hunting criminals. Somewhere there is somebody that loved those men and would like to know where they are. Not knowing is the worst. I know that firsthand, said Walsh. I believe, and so does Fort Myers Police and the FDLE, that this is the work of a serial killer, he said.
In 2019, in an effort to regenerate interest in the case, the Lee County Medical Examiner's Office requested a new facial reconstruction of the remaining 5 skulls by Samantha Steinberg. Now, she's a forensic artist with the Miami-Dade Police Department. Now, to do that, Steinberg gathered data that was available on the 5 remaining sets of remains, including the skulls, and she used refined forensic techniques for facial reconstruction. This is critical when you have unidentified skeletal remains, she said, adding that it's even more important when there's no hair or clothing found, as in this case. While the basic methodology of facial reconstruction is decades old, Steinberg said that science has enhanced ways to determine how someone may have looked. Steinberg added that to positively identify the unidentified remains, DNA would in fact be needed. Usually, she said, because of the mix of races that are prevalent in Florida, especially in South Florida, it can be difficult to determine the facial features of, say, a Hispanic victim in a specific country or origin is not known.
In September of 2022, a victim previously referred to as Victim H was identified as 30-year-old Robert Ronald Bobby Sawden of Fort Myers, Florida. Sawden had been missing since 1996. He was 30 when friends and family last heard from him. Detectives have been able to tie him to the Fort Myers area, but family members have been found in New Jersey, North Carolina, and Washington, authorities said. According to a spokesperson for the Fort Myers Police, Sawden's identification resulted from the collaboration between Fort Myers cold case detectives and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and Parabon Nanolabs. This Virginia-based laboratory provides forensic genealogy services to law enforcement agencies. Genealogists successfully constructed a family tree for Sawden based on DNA extracted from his remains. But there are still 4 victims unidentified. Photos of these victims will be posted on Paradise After Dark, Palmahawk Media, and the Florida Themis Project's social media.
This is what we're looking for. We're looking for people to share these so we can find out what's going on. This is what we want to do with Florida Themis.
There are people missing these men. These men had families. So if we can share these photos that we're going to be posting throughout this month of April, and if you have any information or you have someone missing or recognize these images, call the Fort Myers Police at 239-321-8015 or email Detective Melissa Langton at mlangton@fmpolice.com.
They would rather you send information that doesn't pan out than not send it, because you never know when it just takes that one click or that one email or that one little DNA strand or something just to have these cases blow up.
Yeah, exactly. All right, everyone, that's it for this episode.
Please remember to check out our website for links to all of our social media, our Patreon, our merch store, and much, much more.
And please make sure to subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening on and rate and review. This really helps us branch out and reach a wider audience.
And as always, Thank you all for listening.
To Paradise After Dark.
Dark, 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 dark.